Billionaire CEO divorced her for being fat. She returns as his therapist with secret twins. Dr. Chun, I need you to understand something, Marcus Blackwood said, his voice cracking as he sat across from the poised therapist in her elegant office, completely unaware that he was confessing to the woman whose life he had destroyed 5 years earlier. I had everything a man could want. A successful business, social status, respect. But I threw away the one person who actually loved me. Dr. Isabella Chun adjusted her glasses and made a note on her pad, her professionally calm exterior hiding the storm of emotions raging inside her chest. Can you tell me more about this person you lost, Marcus? My ex-wife, Marcus said, running his hands through his hair as panic began to creep into his voice. Isabella. She was beautiful, kind, and supportive. She believed in me when nobody else did. What happened to your marriage? Isabella asked, her pen poised over her notepad as she prepared to hear her own story told from the perspective of the man who had shattered her world. I was cruel to her, Marcus admitted, tears beginning to form in his eyes. Dr. Chun, I said things that no husband should ever say to his wife. I made her feel worthless because I was too shallow and insecure to see how incredible she was. What kind of things did you say? Isabella pressed, her professional training warring with her personal desire to hear Marcus acknowledge the pain he had caused. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, shame washing over his face. I told her she was fat. I told her she embarrassed me. I divorced her because I thought her appearance reflected poorly on my image. He looked up at Isabella with red-rimmed eyes. Dr. Chun, I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was a coward who cared more about what other people thought than about the woman who loved me unconditionally. Isabella felt her breath catch as she heard Marcus finally admit the truth about their marriage's destruction. And how does that make you feel now? She asked, her voice steady despite the emotional earthquake happening inside her. Like the biggest failure who ever lived, Marcus whispered. Dr. Chun, I would give everything I own to have one more chance to tell Isabella how sorry I am, how wrong I was, how much I regret every cruel word I ever said to her. Isabella set down her pen and looked directly at the broken man sitting across from her, the same man who had once called her a fat embarrassment and filed divorce papers rather than work on their marriage. Well, Marcus, Isabella said quietly, her heart pounding as she prepared to reveal the truth that would change both their lives forever. Today might be your lucky day. Have you ever been told you weren't good enough by someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally? Have you ever wanted revenge on someone who crushed your spirit, only to discover that healing them might heal you too? Tonight, you'll witness a broken billionaire CEO face the wife he discarded for her weight, not knowing she's now his only hope for recovery and the mother of the twin children he never knew existed. But here's the devastating question. When the man who called you worthless begs for your help, do you save him or let him destroy himself the way he once destroyed you? If you believe that transformation is possible and that people can change when they're forced to confront the truth about themselves, hit that subscribe button right now because this story will show you that sometimes the person who breaks us becomes the key to our greatest strength. 7 years earlier, Isabella Martinez had been 25 years old and radiantly confident when she first met Marcus Blackwood in the library at Columbia Business School. She was pursuing her master's degree in organizational psychology while working part-time as a research assistant, and Marcus was in his final year of his MBA program with dreams of building a technology empire. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Marcus had asked, gesturing to the chair across from Isabella's table where she was surrounded by textbooks and research papers. Isabella had looked up to see a tall, dark-haired man with kind eyes and an uncertain smile, holding his own stack of books. "It's all yours," she had said with a warm smile. "Fair warning, though. I'm going to be here for hours working on my thesis." "Perfect," Marcus had replied, settling into the chair. "I have a presentation to prepare that's going to take me all night. We can suffer in academic solidarity." Isabella had laughed, a sound that would become Marcus's favorite music over the following months. "What's your presentation on?" "Sustainable business practices in emerging tech markets," Marcus had said, opening his laptop. "Thrilling stuff, I'm sure. What about your thesis?" "The psychological impact of workplace culture on employee well-being," Isabella had replied. "Also thrilling, in a completely different way." Actually, that sounds fascinating, Marcus had said, and Isabella could tell he genuinely meant it. I'm Marcus, by the way. Marcus Blackwood. Isabella Martinez, she had replied, extending her hand across the table. Nice to meet you, Marcus. That handshake had been the beginning of everything. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Isabella had found themselves studying together regularly, their academic sessions gradually turning into long conversations about their dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. What do you want to do after graduation? Isabella had asked one evening as they walked across campus together after another late night in the library. Change the world, Marcus had said with the confidence of a young man who believed anything was possible. Build a company that revolutionizes how people interact with technology while treating employees like human beings instead of resources. That's ambitious, Isabella had said, impressed by his vision. And admirable. Most business students I know are only focused on profit margins. Profit matters, Marcus had admitted. But I think sustainable success comes from building something that makes people's lives better. What about you? What are your post-graduation plans? I want to help people, Isabella had said simply. Maybe corporate consulting, maybe private practice. I want to use psychology to help people understand themselves better and build healthier relationships. You'd be amazing at that, Marcus had said, stopping their walk to look at her directly. Isabella, you have this way of making people feel heard and understood. It's a gift. Isabella had felt her heart skip at the sincerity in his voice. Thank you. That means a lot coming from someone as driven and focused as you are. Can I ask you something? Marcus had said, his voice carrying a nervous energy that Isabella hadn't heard before. Of course. Would you like to have dinner with me this weekend? Not as study partners, but as... Marcus had hesitated, searching for the right words. As a date. Isabella had suggested with a smile. Yes, Marcus had said with relief. As a date. If you're interested. Isabella had looked at this intelligent, ambitious man who had spent weeks treating her as an equal, who had listened to her ideas and respected her opinions, who had never once made her feel self-conscious about her plus-size figure. I'd love to, Isabella had said, meaning it completely. Their first official date had been dinner at a small Italian restaurant near campus, where they had talked for 4 hours about everything from their childhood dreams to their fears about the future. Marcus had been attentive, funny, and completely focused on Isabella in a way that made her feel beautiful and valued. I have to confess something, Marcus had said as they shared tiramisu for dessert. What's that? Isabella had asked, enjoying the way his eyes lit up when he talked about things that excited him. I've been looking forward to this all week, Marcus had admitted. Isabella, I know we've been study partners for a while, but I've wanted to ask you out since the first day we met. Really? Isabella had asked, surprised by his confession. Really? Marcus had confirmed. You're brilliant, beautiful, and completely yourself in a way that's incredibly attractive. Isabella, you don't try to be anyone other than who you are, and I find that irresistible. Isabella had felt tears prick her eyes at his words. Marcus, that's one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to me. It's just the truth, Marcus had said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Isabella, I hope this is the first of many dinners we share together. Their courtship had been a whirlwind of intellectual connection and growing emotional intimacy. Marcus had pursued Isabella with the same intensity he brought to his business studies, and Isabella had found herself falling for a man who seemed to appreciate every aspect of who she was. You're perfect exactly as you are, Marcus had told her one evening as they lay together in his apartment, 6 months into their relationship. Isabella, I love your mind, your heart, your body, everything about you. Even though I'm not a size 2 like the other girls you could date? Isabella had asked, her insecurities surfacing despite Marcus's consistent reassurance. Especially because you're not a size 2, Marcus had said firmly, pulling her closer to him. Isabella, you're a real woman with curves and softness and beauty that takes my breath away. I love every inch of you. Promise me something, Isabella had said, looking into his eyes. Anything. Promise me that if you ever stop feeling that way, you'll tell me honestly instead of trying to change me, Isabella had said, her voice carrying the weight of past relationships where men had initially accepted her size only to later pressure her to lose weight. I promise, Marcus had said without hesitation. Isabella, I will never ask you to change anything about yourself. You're perfect just as you are. Marcus had kept that promise throughout their remaining time in graduate school. He had been proud to introduce Isabella to his classmates and professors, never showing any sign of embarrassment about her appearance. When they had attended formal events together, Marcus had looked at Isabella like she was the most beautiful woman in the room. "You look incredible," Marcus had said the night of their graduation celebration, watching Isabella get ready in a stunning black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. "Are you sure?" Isabella had asked, adjusting the dress for the 100th time. "It's not too tight." "It's perfect," Marcus had assured her, coming up behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. "Isabella, you're going to be the most beautiful woman there. Even if I'm the biggest?" Isabella had asked, unable to completely silence her insecurities. "Especially because you'll be the most confident, intelligent, and radiant," Marcus had said, kissing her neck. "Beauty isn't about size, Isabella. It's about the light that comes from within, and your light is blinding." The proposal had come 6 months after graduation, when Marcus had started his technology company and Isabella had begun working as a consultant for corporate wellness programs. They were building their careers and their relationship together, supporting each other's ambitions while deepening their emotional connection. "Isabella Martinez," Marcus had said, dropping to one knee in their shared apartment on a snowy December evening. "You are my best friend, my greatest love, and the woman I want to build a life with." Isabella had gasped, covering her mouth with her hands as she saw the ring box in Marcus's trembling fingers. "Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving how much I love and appreciate every single thing about you?" Marcus had asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes," Isabella had sobbed, throwing her arms around his neck. "Yes, Marcus, of course yes. I love you so much," Marcus had whispered as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Isabella, you make me want to be better than I am. You make me feel beautiful in ways I never thought possible," Isabella had replied, looking at the ring that represented their commitment to love each other unconditionally. Their wedding had been held 18 months later in Isabella's family's church in Queens, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated their obvious love and compatibility. Isabella had worn her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to fit her perfectly, while Marcus had looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo. "I promise to love and cherish every part of who you are," Marcus had vowed during their ceremony, his eyes never leaving Isabella's radiant face. "Isabella, you are my heart, my home, and my greatest blessing. I will never take your love for granted or ask you to be anyone other than the incredible woman you already are. I promise to support your dreams while building my own," Isabella had vowed in return. "Marcus, you see beauty in me that I'm still learning to see in myself. I promise to trust your love and let it help me become the confident, successful woman I was meant to be." For the first 2 years of their marriage, Marcus had kept his wedding vows completely. He had supported Isabella's consulting work, celebrated her successes, and continued to make her feel beautiful and valued exactly as she was. Isabella had flourished under his love and support, building a successful practice and growing more confident in her own worth. "Look at this," Isabella had said excitedly one evening, showing Marcus a contract offer from a major corporation. "They want me to design a comprehensive wellness program for their entire workforce." "That's incredible," Marcus had said, pulling her into a celebratory hug. "Isabella, you're amazing. This is going to put your consulting firm on the map. I couldn't have done it without your support," Isabella had said, meaning it completely. "Marcus, you believing in me gave me the confidence to believe in myself. You always had the talent and intelligence," Marcus had replied. "I just helped you see what was already there." But as Marcus's technology company had grown and his social circle had expanded to include investors, high-profile clients, and industry leaders, something had begun to shift in their relationship. The change had been subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but Isabella had noticed it nonetheless. "Who's going to be at this investor dinner?" Isabella had asked as they prepared for one of Marcus's business events. "The usual crowd," Marcus had replied, adjusting his tie in their bedroom mirror. "Richardson from Goldman Sachs, the Pemberton family, some potential new investors from the West Coast. Should I wear the blue dress or the black one?" Isabella had asked, holding up 2 options. Marcus had paused, looking at both dresses with an expression Isabella couldn't quite read. "The black one is more professional," he had said finally. "Professional?" Isabella had repeated, confused by his word choice. "You know, conservative. Appropriate for a business setting," Marcus had explained, though his tone had carried an edge that hadn't been there before. Isabella had chosen the black dress, but she had spent the entire evening feeling self-conscious in a way she hadn't experienced since the early days of their relationship. Marcus had been polite and attentive, but Isabella had sensed a distance between them that hadn't existed before. "How do you think tonight went?" Isabella had asked as they drove home from the event. "Fine," Marcus had replied, but his tone had been clipped. "Isabella, did you have to take seconds at dinner?" "I'm sorry," Isabella had asked, confused by the question. "You went back for more of the salmon," Marcus had said, his voice carrying a criticism that hit Isabella like a physical blow. "People notice things like that. People notice when someone enjoys their food?" Isabella had asked, hurt beginning to creep into her voice. "People notice when someone appears to lack self-control," Marcus had replied, and Isabella had felt her world shift on its axis. "Self-control?" Isabella had repeated, staring at her husband in disbelief. "Marcus, are you criticizing me for eating dinner?" "I'm just saying that we need to be mindful of the image we project," Marcus had said, though he had looked uncomfortable with his own words. "Isabella, these people judge everything about us, including what we eat and how we present ourselves." "And how exactly do I present myself?" Isabella had asked, though she already dreaded the answer. Marcus had been quiet for a long moment, and Isabella had seen him struggling with something internal. "You present yourself as someone who doesn't take care of her appearance," he had said finally, the words falling between them like stones. Isabella had felt her breath catch as the man who had promised to love her unconditionally essentially called her appearance unprofessional and lacking in self-control. "Marcus, are you saying you're embarrassed by how I look?" Isabella had asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm saying that image matters in business," Marcus had replied, though he hadn't been able to meet her eyes. "Isabella, these people expect CEOs to have wives who look a certain way. What way is that?" Isabella had asked, though she already knew the answer would destroy something fundamental between them. "Thin," Marcus had said quietly. "Polished. Like they take care of themselves." Isabella had stared at her husband in the car, processing the fact that the man who had once told her she was perfect exactly as she was now considered her appearance a liability to his business success. "I see," Isabella had said calmly, though her heart was breaking into pieces. "And what would you like me to do about that?" "Maybe we could look into some diet programs," Marcus had suggested, his voice carrying false casualness. "Or a personal trainer." "Isabella, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Just some lifestyle changes to help you feel more confident." "To help me feel more confident? Or to help you feel less embarrassed?" Isabella had asked, tears beginning to stream down her cheeks. "Isabella, don't be dramatic," Marcus had said, but there had been guilt in his voice. "I'm trying to help us both succeed. By asking me to change the body you once said you loved exactly as it was?" Isabella had asked. Marcus had been quiet for the rest of the drive home, and Isabella had understood that their marriage had just crossed a line from which there might be no return. Over the following months, Marcus's criticism had become more frequent and more pointed. He had made comments about Isabella's clothing choices, her food portions, her exercise habits, and her appearance at business events. Each comment had chipped away at Isabella's confidence until she had barely recognized herself. "Isabella, did you really need that piece of cake?" Marcus had asked after a charity gala where Isabella had indulged in dessert. "It's a piece of cake, Marcus," Isabella had replied, her patience wearing thin. "At a party where dessert was served." "I'm just concerned about your health," Marcus had said, but his tone had suggested criticism rather than care. "My health is fine," Isabella had said firmly. "My blood pressure is normal, my cholesterol is normal, my doctor says I'm healthy. This isn't about my health, Marcus. This is about your image. Can you blame me for wanting my wife to look her best?" Marcus had asked, and Isabella had felt another piece of her heartbreak. "I thought I was your best," Isabella had said quietly. "You used to think I was beautiful." "You could be beautiful," Marcus had replied, "if you put in some effort." The conversations had become a constant source of tension in their marriage. Marcus had started bringing home diet books, suggesting gym memberships, and making increasingly pointed comments about Isabella's appearance and eating habits. "I signed us up for a couples fitness program," Marcus had announced one evening, presenting Isabella with brochures for an expensive personal training service. "Without asking me," Isabella had said, looking at the brochures with a mixture of hurt and anger. "I thought you'd be excited about the opportunity to get healthy together," Marcus had said, though his tone had suggested he thought she should be grateful for his initiative. "I am healthy," Isabella had repeated for what felt like the 100th time. "Marcus, what's really going on here? Why have you suddenly decided that my body is a problem that needs to be solved?" Marcus had been quiet for a moment, and Isabella had seen him wrestling with truths he didn't want to admit. "The Richardsons made a comment at the club last week," Marcus had said finally, "about how successful men usually have wives who take care of themselves." "The Richardsons made a comment about me?" Isabella had asked, humiliation washing over her. "Not specifically about you," Marcus had backtracked quickly. "Just a general observation about the correlation between a man's success and his wife's appearance." "And you agreed with them?" Isabella had asked, though she already knew the answer. "I think there's some truth to the idea that couples should motivate each other to be their best selves," Marcus had said, his corporate speak failing to disguise the cruelty of his message. "And you think my best self is a thinner self?" Isabella had asked. "I think your most confident self might be a healthier self," Marcus had replied, and Isabella had understood that her husband now saw her body as an embarrassment rather than something to be celebrated. If you've ever had someone you loved make you feel like you weren't good enough exactly as you are, hit that like button now, because this story is about to show you that sometimes the opinions that hurt us most become the motivation for our greatest transformations. The decline of their marriage had accelerated from that point. Marcus had become increasingly critical and controlling about Isabella's appearance, while Isabella had grown more defensive and hurt by his constant suggestions for improvement. The loving, supportive partnership they had built in graduate school had devolved into a relationship where Isabella felt constantly judged and found wanting. "Isabella, I've made an appointment for you with a nutritionist," Marcus had announced one morning over breakfast, sliding a business card across their kitchen table. "You made an appointment for me?" Isabella had asked, staring at the card with a mixture of disbelief and rage. "Dr. Pemberton comes highly recommended," Marcus had said, continuing to read his financial reports as if he were discussing a routine matter. "She specializes in sustainable weight loss for professional women." "I didn't ask you to make me an appointment with anyone," Isabella had said, her voice rising with anger. "Marcus, you can't just decide that I need professional help with my appearance and book appointments without my consent. I'm trying to help you feel better about yourself," Marcus had replied, finally looking up from his papers. "Isabella, you've been so self-conscious lately about how you look at business events." "I've been self-conscious because my husband keeps telling me I'm not good enough," Isabella had shot back. "Marcus, I felt beautiful and confident until you started treating my body like a problem that needed to be solved." "Your body isn't a problem," Marcus had said, but his tone had lacked conviction. "I just think you could feel more confident if you lost some weight." "Why?" Isabella had demanded. "Why would losing weight make me more confident? I was confident when we met. I was confident when we got married. I was confident until you decided that my size was embarrassing to you." Marcus had been quiet, unable to provide an answer that didn't reveal the shallow truth about his changed priorities. "This isn't about confidence, Marcus," Isabella had continued, tears beginning to fall. "This is about you being ashamed of me. This is about you caring more about what other people think than about how your criticism affects your wife." "Isabella, you're being overly emotional about this," Marcus had said, using the dismissive tone that had become his default response to her concerns. "Overly emotional." Isabella had stood up from the table, the nutritionist's business card crumpled in her fist. "Marcus, my husband just told me I need professional help to be acceptable as his wife. How exactly should I be responding to that?" "With gratitude that I care enough to help you improve yourself," Marcus had replied, and Isabella had felt the last piece of her heart break completely. The appointment with the nutritionist had been the beginning of Isabella's desperate attempt to save her marriage by changing her body. She had thrown herself into diet and exercise with the same intensity she once brought to her career, determined to become the wife Marcus seemed to want. "I've lost 15 pounds, Isabella had announced proudly after 6 weeks of strict dieting and daily gym sessions. "That's great," Marcus had replied, barely looking up from his laptop. "Keep it up. Just keep it up," Isabella had asked, hurt by his lukewarm response to her efforts. "What do you want me to say?" Marcus had asked with irritation. "You still have a long way to go." Isabella had stared at her husband, understanding that no amount of weight loss would ever be enough to restore his love and respect. The damage to their relationship went deeper than her physical appearance. It went to the core of Marcus's character and his willingness to value image over substance. "How much weight do I need to lose before you love me again?" Isabella had asked quietly. "This isn't about love," Marcus had said, though his words had suggested otherwise. "This is about health and confidence and presenting our best selves to the world." "Our best selves, or your best image?" Isabella had asked. "Is there a difference?" Marcus had replied, and Isabella had realized that the man she had married no longer existed. The final confrontation had come 6 months later, when Isabella had lost 40 pounds but still hadn't earned back Marcus's affection or respect. She had been existing in a state of constant hunger and self-denial, monitoring every bite of food and spending hours at the gym, but Marcus had remained distant and critical. "We need to talk," Marcus had said one evening, coming home from work with an expression that Isabella had learned to dread. "About what?" Isabella had asked, though the weight loss had made her constantly exhausted and emotionally fragile. "About our marriage," Marcus had said, sitting across from her in their living room with the formality of a business meeting. "Isabella, I don't think this is working." "What's not working?" Isabella had asked, though she had felt her world beginning to crumble. "Us," Marcus had said simply. "This relationship. Isabella, we've grown apart, and I don't see how we can bridge the gap." "We've grown apart because you've been criticizing me for 2 years," Isabella had pointed out, her voice hollow with exhaustion and heartbreak. "We've grown apart because we want different things," Marcus had corrected. "Isabella, you want a husband who accepts you exactly as you are, and I want a wife who's willing to grow and improve." "Improve," Isabella had repeated. "Marcus, I've lost 40 pounds. I've changed my entire lifestyle. I've done everything you asked me to do." "And I appreciate that," Marcus had said, though his tone had suggested otherwise. "But Isabella, I don't think we're compatible anymore." "We're not compatible because I'm still fat," Isabella had asked, the word feeling like poison in her mouth. Marcus had been quiet for a long moment, and Isabella had seen him making a decision that would destroy what remained of their marriage. "I think we should get divorced," Marcus had said finally, the words hitting Isabella like physical blows. "Divorced?" Isabella had gasped. "Marcus, we're married. We took vows. We promised to love each other for better or worse." "People change, Isabella," Marcus had said, his voice cold and distant. "I've changed, you've changed, our relationship has changed. I think it's better for both of us if we admit that this isn't working and move on." "Move on to what?" Isabella had asked desperately. "Marcus, I love you. I've done everything you asked me to do to save our marriage. And I appreciate your efforts," Marcus had said with the same tone he might use to thank an employee for a completed project. "But Isabella, I don't think we're right for each other anymore." Isabella had stared at her husband, this man who had once promised to love every curve of her body, who had convinced her she was beautiful exactly as she was, who was now discarding her like an unsuccessful business venture. "This is about my weight," Isabella had said with heartbreaking clarity. "Marcus, you're divorcing me because I'm fat. This is about compatibility and lifestyle choices," Marcus had replied, but they both knew the truth. "You're divorcing me because you're embarrassed by me," Isabella had continued, tears streaming down her face. "Because you care more about what the Richardsons think than about the woman who's loved you unconditionally for 5 years." "Isabella, don't make this more dramatic than it needs to be," Marcus had said, standing up to signal the end of their conversation. "We're adults. We can handle this divorce maturely and amicably." "Maturely?" Isabella had laughed bitterly. "Marcus, there's nothing mature about abandoning your wife because she doesn't fit your image requirements." "I'm not abandoning you," Marcus had protested weakly. "I'm ending a marriage that isn't working for either of us." "It's not working for you," Isabella had corrected. It stopped working for you the moment you decided that having a fat wife was bad for your business. Marcus had walked toward their bedroom, then paused at the doorway. Isabella, I'll have my attorney contact you about the divorce proceedings. I want this to be as painless as possible for both of us. Painless? Isabella had called after him. Marcus, you're destroying everything we built together. How exactly is that supposed to be painless? But Marcus had already disappeared into their bedroom, leaving Isabella alone in their living room with the shattered remains of a marriage that had been killed by vanity and social pressure. The divorce proceedings had been swift and brutal. Marcus had used his wealth and connections to hire the best attorneys, while Isabella had struggled to afford legal representation. The settlement had been minimal, leaving Isabella with enough money to survive, but not enough to maintain the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to as Marcus's wife. Mrs. Blackwood, her attorney had said during one of their final meetings, I have to ask if you're certain about not requesting spousal support. Given the length of your marriage and your husband's substantial assets, you could be entitled to significant ongoing financial assistance. I don't want his money, Isabella had said firmly, though she had no idea how she would support herself without Marcus's wealth. I want my dignity. I want to walk away from this marriage with my self-respect intact. That's admirable, her attorney had replied. But Mrs. Blackwood, dignity doesn't pay rent. You should consider the practical implications of refusing financial support. Isabella had considered it, but the thought of being financially dependent on a man who had discarded her for her appearance had been unbearable. She had signed away her rights to Marcus's money in exchange for the freedom to rebuild her life without his continuing influence. The final divorce hearing had been held on a gray October morning, with Isabella sitting alone on one side of the courtroom while Marcus was surrounded by his legal team. When the judge had declared their marriage officially dissolved, Isabella had felt a mixture of relief and devastation that would take her years to process. Isabella, Marcus had approached her outside the courthouse after the hearing, his expression carrying something that might have been regret. What do you want, Marcus? Isabella had asked, emotionally drained from watching her marriage legally end. I want you to know that I hope you find happiness, Marcus had said, though his words had felt hollow and rehearsed. I hope you find someone who's thin enough to make you happy, Isabella had replied, her voice carrying all the pain and anger of their failed relationship. Isabella, it didn't have to end this way, Marcus had said, but they both knew he was lying. Yes, it did, Isabella had corrected sadly. Marcus, the moment you decided that my body was more important than my heart, this ending became inevitable. Isabella had walked away from the courthouse and from Marcus's life, carrying nothing but a broken heart and the devastating belief that she was fundamentally unworthy of unconditional love. But what Marcus didn't know, what Isabella had been too hurt and proud to tell him during their divorce proceedings, was that she was 8 weeks pregnant with twins when he had asked for the divorce. In her devastation and humiliation, Isabella had made the decision to disappear from Marcus's life completely, moving across the country to rebuild herself and raise their children without the father who had rejected their mother for her appearance. 2 days after the divorce was finalized, Isabella had packed her belongings into a rented truck and driven to California, carrying the secret of Marcus's children and the determination to transform herself into someone who would never again allow another person's opinion to define her worth. She had no idea that 5 years later, she would return to New York as Dr. Isabella Chun, a successful therapist with a thriving practice, a confident presence, and the power to heal the man who had once broken her heart so completely that she had nearly lost herself in the process. 5 years in California had transformed Isabella Martinez into Dr. Isabella Chun in ways that went far beyond her physical appearance. The woman who had fled New York as a broken, devastated wife had rebuilt herself from the ground up, earning her doctorate in clinical psychology while raising twin children and losing over 100 pounds through healthy lifestyle changes rather than desperate dieting. Dr. Chun, your 3 o'clock appointment is here, her assistant Rebecca announced through the intercom in Isabella's elegant Manhattan office, where she had recently opened a satellite practice to serve high-profile executives who needed discretionary therapy services. Isabella looked up from her case notes, adjusting the designer glasses she now wore and smoothing her tailored navy suit. The woman staring back at her from the reflection in her office window bore little resemblance to the defeated wife who had left this city 5 years earlier. Her hair was styled in a sleek bob, her makeup was professionally applied, and her clothing fit her transformed figure perfectly. "Send them in," Isabella replied, though she had no idea that her next client would be the man who had destroyed her previous life and unknowingly fathered the twin children she was raising alone. The door opened, and Marcus Blackwood walked into her office looking like a shadow of his former confident self. His expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he had lost from stress, the dark circles under his eyes, or the nervous energy that radiated from his every movement. Isabella felt her breath catch as she saw her ex-husband for the first time in 5 years, but her professional training kept her expression neutral and composed. "Mr. Blackwood," Isabella said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "Please have a seat." Marcus settled into the chair, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to project an authority he clearly no longer possessed. "Dr. Chen, thank you for seeing me on such short notice. My assistant said you specialize in executive mental health." "That's correct," Isabella replied, opening a fresh file folder. "Why don't you tell me what brings you to therapy?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with where to begin. "I'm having panic attacks," he said finally. "Severe ones. They're affecting my ability to run my company." "How long have you been experiencing these panic attacks?" Isabella asked, making notes while carefully observing the man who had once told her she was too fat to be his wife. "About 6 months," Marcus replied. "But they're getting worse. Dr. Chun, I can't sleep, I can't concentrate, and I'm making terrible business decisions. My board of directors is threatening to remove me as CEO if I don't get professional help. That must feel very overwhelming," Isabella said with professional empathy. "Can you describe what these panic attacks feel like?" "Like I'm drowning," Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. "Like everything I've built is falling apart, and I'm powerless to stop it. Dr. Chun, I feel like I'm losing control of everything in my life." Isabella watched her ex-husband struggle with vulnerability, noting how different he seemed from the confident, sometimes cruel man she had been married to. "When did you first notice these feelings of losing control?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I think it started around the time of my divorce," he said quietly. 5 years ago, my ex-wife and I separated, and ever since then, nothing in my life has felt stable." "Tell me about your marriage," Isabella said, her pen poised over her notepad as she prepared to hear her own story from Marcus's perspective. "It was the biggest mistake of my life," Marcus said, tears beginning to form in his eyes. "Dr. Chun, I had a wife who loved me unconditionally, who supported my dreams, who believed in me when nobody else did. And I destroyed our marriage because I was shallow and weak." "What happened?" Isabella asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I became successful, and success made me cruel," Marcus admitted. Isabella was beautiful and intelligent and kind, but she was also plus-sized. "When I started moving in wealthier social circles, I became embarrassed by her appearance." Isabella felt her heart race as she heard Marcus acknowledge the truth about their marriage's destruction. "How did you express that embarrassment?" "I criticized her constantly," Marcus said, shame washing over his face. "I made comments about her weight, her food choices, her appearance at business events. Dr. Chun, I made the woman I loved feel worthless because I cared more about other people's opinions than about her feelings." "And how did she respond to your criticism?" Isabella asked. "She tried to change herself to save our marriage," Marcus replied, his voice heavy with regret. "She lost weight, joined gyms, saw nutritionists. Isabella did everything I asked her to do, and I still wasn't satisfied. I still found things to criticize." "What happened to your marriage?" Isabella asked, though she already knew the devastating answer. "I divorced her," Marcus said quietly. "Dr. Chun, I looked at this incredible woman who had been nothing but loving and supportive, and I divorced her because I thought her appearance reflected poorly on my image." Isabella set down her pen and looked directly at Marcus. "And how do you feel about that decision now?" "Like the biggest failure who ever lived," Marcus whispered. "Dr. Chun, I would give everything I own to have one more chance to tell Isabella how sorry I am, how wrong I was, how much I regret every cruel word I ever said to her." The room was quiet for a long moment as Isabella processed hearing Marcus finally admit the truth about their marriage and express genuine remorse for his actions. Part of her felt vindicated by his confession, while another part felt sad for the pain they had both experienced. "Marcus," Isabella said quietly, her heart pounding as she made the decision that would change both their lives. "You might get that chance sooner than you think." Marcus looked up at her with confusion. "I'm sorry." Isabella took a deep breath and removed her glasses, letting her natural features become more visible. "Hello, Marcus. It's me, Isabella." For a moment, Marcus stared at her in complete silence, his mind clearly struggling to process what he was seeing. The elegant, confident therapist sitting across from him gradually transformed in his perception into the wife he had divorced 5 years earlier. "Isabella." Marcus gasped, his face going pale. "Oh my God. Isabella, is it really you?" "Yes," Isabella replied calmly. "It's really me." Marcus's breathing became rapid and shallow as the full impact of the situation hit him. "You're Dr. Chen. You're my therapist." "Isabella, how is this possible?" "I earned my doctorate in clinical psychology after our divorce," Isabella explained. "I moved to California, rebuilt my life, and developed a successful practice specializing in executive mental health." "But you look so different," Marcus said, still staring at her in shock. "You're so confident, so polished, so thin," Isabella suggested with a slight smile. "Beautiful," Marcus corrected quietly. "Isabella, you're absolutely beautiful." "I always was," Isabella replied firmly. "You just couldn't see it because you were too concerned with what other people thought." Marcus put his head in his hands as the full weight of his recognition hit him. "Isabella, I am so sorry. I am so incredibly sorry for everything I put you through." "I know you are," Isabella said gently. "Marcus, that's why you're here. The panic attacks, the feeling of losing control, the business problems. They're all symptoms of the guilt and regret you've been carrying for 5 years." "You're right," Marcus admitted, looking up at her with red-rimmed eyes. "Isabella, not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted how I treated you. I've dated other women, but none of them made me feel the way you did. None of them loved me the way you did. And none of them were thin enough to make you happy either." Isabella asked with a hint of her old hurt. "None of them were you," Marcus said simply. "Isabella, I realized too late that I hadn't just lost a wife. I had lost my best friend, my biggest supporter, the woman who made me want to be better than I was." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes despite her professional composure. "Marcus, what you did to me nearly destroyed me. Do you understand that?" "I'm beginning to," Marcus said quietly. "Isabella, seeing you now, seeing how successful and confident you've become, I realize how much damage I must have caused. I realize how much pain you must have gone through because of my cruelty." "I spent 2 years in therapy myself," Isabella admitted, "learning to rebuild my self-worth after you convinced me I was worthless because of my size." "You were never worthless," Marcus said desperately. "Isabella, you were the most valuable thing in my life, and I threw you away because I was too stupid and shallow to appreciate what I had." If you believe that people can genuinely change when they're forced to confront the devastating consequences of their actions, like this video right now, because you're about to witness one of the most powerful moments of accountability and growth you've ever seen. Isabella looked at her ex-husband, this broken man who was finally acknowledging the pain he had caused, and made a decision that would surprise them both. "Marcus, I have something else to tell you," Isabella said quietly. "What?" Marcus asked, though he looked like he could barely handle any more revelations. "When you divorced me, I was 8 weeks pregnant," Isabella said, watching as Marcus's face went from confusion to shock to devastation. "Pregnant?" Marcus whispered. "Isabella, you were pregnant when I divorced you?" "With twins," Isabella continued. "A boy and a girl, Emma and Ethan. They're 5 years old now." Marcus stared at her in complete silence for what felt like an eternity. "I have children," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "You have children," Isabella confirmed. "Children you've never met because I was too hurt and too afraid to tell you about them." "Oh my God," Marcus said, tears beginning to stream down his face. "Isabella, I have children. We have children together." "We do," Isabella said, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her professional composure. "What do they look like?" Marcus asked desperately. "Are they healthy? Are they happy?" Do they know about me? They're beautiful and healthy and brilliant, Isabella replied. Emma has your eyes and my determination. Ethan has my coloring and your analytical mind. They know they have a father, but they don't know who you are. Why didn't you tell me? Marcus asked, though his tone carried no accusation, only heartbreak. Because you divorced me for being fat, Isabella said simply. Because you told me I was embarrassing and worthless. Because I was afraid you would reject them the way you rejected me. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what he had lost through his shallow priorities. Isabella, I missed 5 years of my children's lives because I was too cruel and stupid to value what I had. You missed 5 years because you chose image over substance, Isabella corrected. But Marcus, they don't have to miss the rest of their lives without a father if you're willing to do the work to become the man they deserve. What kind of work? Marcus asked immediately. The kind of work we're doing right here, Isabella said. Marcus, you came to me because you're having panic attacks and losing control of your life. Those symptoms are manifestations of deeper issues with your values, your priorities, and your understanding of what really matters. You're absolutely right, Marcus said. Isabella, everything fell apart after our divorce. My business relationships became shallow and transactional. My personal relationships became meaningless. I've been successful on paper, but I've been miserable in reality. Because success without substance is empty, Isabella explained. Marcus, you built your life around other people's opinions instead of your own values. When you divorced me to maintain your image, you destroyed the only relationship that was based on genuine love and acceptance. So what do I do now? Marcus asked. Isabella, how do I fix this? How do I become worthy of being a father to our children? You continue therapy, Isabella said. You do the hard work of examining your values and changing your priorities. You prove through consistent actions that you've learned to value character over appearance. With you as my therapist? Marcus asked hopefully. Isabella considered the question carefully. Marcus, there are ethical considerations about treating someone with whom I have such a complicated personal history. But there are also potential benefits to working with someone who truly understands the issues you need to address. Please, Marcus said desperately. Isabella, you're the only person who knows the full truth about who I was and who I need to become. If anyone can help me become worthy of being a father to our children, it's you. Isabella looked at this broken man who had once been her husband, weighing her professional obligations against the opportunity to help him become the father Emma and Ethan deserved. All right, Isabella said finally. I'll continue as your therapist, but with conditions. You commit to doing the work, no matter how uncomfortable it becomes. You accept that your relationship with me is now strictly professional. And you understand that meeting our children is contingent on the progress you make in therapy. I accept all of those conditions, Marcus said immediately. Isabella, thank you for giving me this chance. Thank you for being willing to help me become better. I'm not doing this for you, Isabella said firmly. I'm doing this for Emma and Ethan. They deserve to have a father who's capable of loving them unconditionally. Over the following months, Isabella worked with Marcus in therapy sessions that were unlike anything either of them had experienced. Marcus confronted his superficial values, his fear of other people's judgment, and his pattern of prioritizing image over substance. Isabella watched her ex-husband slowly transform from a man driven by external validation into someone who was learning to find worth from within. I've been thinking about what you said last week, Marcus said during one of their sessions, 3 months into his therapy. About how I made you feel worthless because I felt worthless myself. Tell me more about that, Isabella encouraged. I think I criticized your appearance because I was so insecure about my own worth, Marcus said. I thought having a thin, conventionally beautiful wife would prove to the world that I was successful and desirable. And now? Isabella asked. Now I realize that using another person to validate your own worth is the most shallow, cruel thing you can do, Marcus replied. Isabella, I didn't just damage you. I damaged myself by destroying the only relationship where I was loved for who I actually was. That's a significant insight, Isabella said. How does it feel to acknowledge that? Devastating and liberating at the same time, Marcus admitted. Devastating because I understand how much I lost. Liberating because I'm starting to believe I can be better. During another session, Marcus addressed his pattern of seeking external validation for his self-worth. "I've been looking at old photos of us," Marcus said. "From our wedding, from graduate school, from the early years of our marriage." "What did you notice?" Isabella asked. "How happy we both looked," Marcus said. "Isabella, in those photos, you're radiant. Not because you were thin or because you fit some conventional standard of beauty, but because you were confident and loved and genuinely joyful." "And how do you look in those photos?" Isabella asked. "Like a man who knew he was incredibly lucky," Marcus replied. "Like someone who had found something precious and valuable." "What changed?" Isabella asked, though she already knew the answer. "I started caring more about what other people thought than about what I felt," Marcus said. "I let other people's shallow opinions override my own knowledge of your worth." "And how do you plan to prevent that from happening again?" Isabella asked. "By building my self-worth from my character and actions rather than from external validation," Marcus said. "By remembering that the opinions of shallow people don't determine the value of deep relationships." As Marcus progressed in therapy, Isabella began to share more about the impact his treatment had on her life and their children. "Emma asked me again why she doesn't have a daddy," Isabella said during one session. "What did you tell her?" Marcus asked, pain evident in his voice. "I told her that sometimes people need time to learn how to be good parents," Isabella replied. "But Marcus, she's starting to ask more specific questions. Both children are. Are they curious about me?" Marcus asked hopefully. "They're curious about their father," Isabella corrected. "They don't know that their father is someone I once knew. When can I meet them?" Marcus asked. "Isabella, I've been in therapy for 6 months. I've been doing the work you asked me to do." Isabella studied her ex-husband carefully. The man sitting across from her bore little resemblance to the shallow, cruel person who had divorced her for her weight. Marcus had developed genuine empathy, real self-awareness, and authentic values that prioritized substance over image. "I think you're ready for a supervised meeting," Isabella said finally. Marcus's face lit up with a joy that Isabella hadn't seen since their early marriage. "Really? Isabella, you think I'm ready to meet our children?" "I think you're ready to begin the process of becoming their father," Isabella said. "But Marcus, this has to be about them, not about you. Their well-being comes first, always." "Of course," Marcus said immediately. "Isabella, how do we do this? How do I meet them?" "Carefully," Isabella replied. "We start with a casual meeting where you're introduced as a friend of Mommy's who wants to meet them. We see how they respond to you, how you interact with them, and how everyone feels about moving forward." The meeting was arranged for a Saturday afternoon at a child-friendly restaurant in Manhattan. Isabella arrived early with Emma and Ethan, 2 beautiful 5-year-olds who had their father's intelligence and their mother's warmth. "Mommy, is this the friend you told us about?" Emma asked as Marcus approached their table, his nervousness barely contained. "Yes, sweetheart," Isabella said. "Emma, Ethan, this is Marcus. He's someone very special to me." Marcus looked at his children for the first time, these 2 perfect little people who represented everything he had missed by choosing appearance over love. Emma had his dark eyes and Isabella's determined expression, while Ethan had Isabella's coloring and Marcus's analytical way of observing the world. "Hello, Emma and Ethan," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's so wonderful to meet you both. Are you the one who makes Mommy smile?" Ethan asked with the direct honesty of a 5-year-old. Marcus looked at Isabella, who was indeed smiling at the interaction between Marcus and their children. "I hope so," Marcus said quietly. "Mommy smiles a lot now," Emma added. "She says she's happy because she has us in her work and because she learned to love herself." "Your mommy is very wise," Marcus said, understanding the profound truth in Emma's innocent observation. The lunch went better than Isabella had dared to hope. Marcus was patient, attentive, and genuinely interested in Emma and Ethan as individuals rather than as reflections of himself. The children warmed to him quickly, drawn to his gentle manner and obvious effort to connect with them. "Can Marcus come to the park with us?" Emma asked as they finished their meal. Isabella looked at Marcus, who was clearly hoping for more time with the children he was just getting to know. "If Marcus has time, I think that would be nice." At the park, Isabella watched Marcus push Emma on the swings while Ethan showed him how to properly climb the jungle gym. Marcus was completely focused on the children, asking questions about their interests, celebrating their accomplishments, and treating them like the precious individuals they were. He's different than I expected, Isabella thought to herself, seeing Marcus interact with their children with natural warmth and genuine interest. Mommy, Ethan said as they walked home from the park, I like Marcus. He listens when we talk. Yeah, Emma agreed. And he doesn't try to pretend he knows everything about kid stuff. That evening, after the children were in bed, Isabella called Marcus to discuss how the meeting had gone. They're incredible, Marcus said, his voice full of wonder. Isabella, they're so smart and funny and kind. How did you raise such amazing children? The same way you're learning to value people, Isabella replied. By focusing on their character instead of their appearance, by listening to them instead of trying to control them, by loving them for who they are instead of who I want them to be. Can I see them again? Marcus asked hopefully. Yes, Isabella said. But Marcus, we move at their pace, not yours. This is about building a relationship that serves them, not about satisfying your need to be their father. Over the following months, Marcus gradually became a consistent presence in Emma and Ethan's lives. He attended their school events, helped with homework, and spent weekends introducing them to activities they enjoyed. The children grew to love and trust him, though they still didn't know he was their biological father. When do we tell them the truth? Marcus asked Isabella after one particularly lovely day at the zoo with the children. When you're ready to be their father for the rest of their lives, regardless of what happens between us, Isabella replied. Marcus, once they know you're their dad, there's no going back. You become responsible for their emotional security forever. I want that responsibility, Marcus said without hesitation. Isabella, being with Emma and Ethan has taught me what really matters in life. They've shown me the kind of love I threw away when I divorced you. And what kind of love is that? Isabella asked. Unconditional love, Marcus said. Love that sees past surface appearances to the heart of who someone is. Love that celebrates differences instead of trying to change them. Isabella looked at her ex-husband, this man who had destroyed her self-worth and was now rebuilding it through his transformation into a genuine father to their children. I think you're ready, Isabella said finally. The conversation with Emma and Ethan took place on a Sunday morning in Isabella's living room, with both parents present to answer questions and provide reassurance. Emma, Ethan, Marcus and I have something important to tell you, Isabella began. Are you getting married? Emma asked with 5-year-old directness. No, sweetheart, Isabella laughed. But Marcus is more than just a friend. He's your father. The children looked back and forth between Isabella and Marcus, processing this information with the adaptability that made children so resilient. Marcus is our daddy. Ethan asked. Yes, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your daddy, and I love you both more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone. Where were you when we were babies? Emma asked, getting to the heart of the matter with characteristic intelligence. I wasn't ready to be a good daddy yet, Marcus explained honestly. I had to learn how to be the kind of father you both deserve. But you're ready now? Ethan asked. I'm ready now, Marcus confirmed. If you'll have me. Emma and Ethan looked at each other in that wordless communication that twins often share. Then Emma spoke for both of them. We already love you, Emma said simply. So it's good that you're our daddy. Isabella watched Marcus break down in tears of joy and relief as he embraced the children who were giving him the unconditional acceptance he had never learned to value until it was almost too late. If you believe that everyone deserves a second chance to become the person they were meant to be, share this video right now because this story proves that transformation is possible when people are willing to do the hard work of changing their hearts. 18 months after Marcus had walked into Isabella's therapy office as a broken man seeking help for panic attacks, he had become a devoted father, a changed person, and someone Isabella was learning to trust again. Their relationship remained complex, built on a foundation of shared children and mutual respect rather than romantic love, but it was healthier than their marriage had ever been. I've been thinking about forgiveness, Isabella said during one of their co-parenting conversations over coffee while the children played at a nearby playground. What about it? Marcus asked. I've realized that forgiving you wasn't something I did for you, Isabella said. It was something I did for myself and for Emma and Ethan. How so? Marcus asked. Carrying anger and resentment was poisoning my ability to build new relationships and trust new people, Isabella explained. Forgiving you freed me from the prison of my own hurt. And what about us? Marcus asked carefully. Is there any possibility of us finding our way back to each other romantically? Isabella considered the question honestly. I don't know, she said finally. Marcus, you hurt me deeply, and while I've forgiven you, I'm not sure I can ever fully trust you with my heart again. I understand, Marcus said, though disappointment was evident in his voice. Isabella, what you've given me by allowing me to be Emma and Ethan's father is more than I deserve. If friendship and co-parenting is all we ever have, I'm grateful for it. But what if it could be more than that? Isabella asked, surprising them both with her question. Marcus looked at her with hope and caution. What are you saying? I'm saying that watching you transform into the father our children deserve has made me wonder if you might also be capable of becoming the partner I deserve, Isabella said. Not the man who married me, and not the man who divorced me, but someone entirely new. I'd like the chance to find out, Marcus said quietly. Isabella, I know I don't deserve your love again, but I've learned how to value it properly now. Then maybe we take it slowly, Isabella said. Maybe we see if the man you've become can love the woman I've always been. I already know he can, Marcus said with certainty. The question is whether you can learn to trust him. 2 years later, Dr. Isabella Chun and Marcus Blackwood were married for the second time in a small ceremony attended by Emma and Ethan, who served as the maid of honor and best man respectively. The wedding was nothing like their first elaborate affair. It was simple, meaningful, and focused on the family they had built through forgiveness, growth, and genuine transformation. Do you, Isabella, take Marcus to be your husband, promising to love him for who he is rather than who you want him to be? The officiant asked. I do, Isabella said, looking at the man who had learned to value character over image, substance over appearance, and love over social status. Do you, Marcus, take Isabella to be your wife, promising to love her unconditionally regardless of how she looks, what she weighs, or what other people think? The officiant asked. I do, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face as he made vows he finally understood. Isabella, I promise to love you exactly as you are for exactly who you are, forever. In her closing remarks that evening at their small reception, Isabella shared the wisdom that their journey had taught her. Sometimes the person who breaks us becomes the person who teaches us how strong we really are, Isabella said to their gathered friends and family. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, but about choosing to build a better future. Sometimes transformation requires losing everything we thought we wanted in order to discover what we actually need, Marcus added, holding Isabella's hand as Emma and Ethan played with their cousins nearby. And sometimes, Isabella concluded, the most broken relationships can become the most beautiful ones when both people are willing to do the hard work of becoming who they were meant to be. The woman who had once been told she was too fat to be loved had learned that her worth came from within. The man who had once valued image over substance had learned that true beauty comes from character. And the children who had brought them back together had learned that families can be broken and healed and made even stronger through the process. Isabella had lost the weight, but found her worth. Marcus had lost his cruelty and found his heart. And together, they had discovered that sometimes the person who destroys us becomes the person who teaches us how to rebuild ourselves into someone better than we ever imagined we could be. Their story wasn't about revenge or about getting back together with someone who had hurt you. It was about the power of genuine transformation, the healing that comes from forgiveness, and the truth that people can change when they're willing to confront their deepest flaws and do the hard work of becoming better. Dr. Isabella Chun continued her successful therapy practice, helping other people discover their worth and heal from relationships that had damaged their self-esteem. Marcus Blackwood ran his company with values that prioritized employee well-being over profit margins and genuine success over superficial image. And Emma and Ethan grew up in a home where they learned that love means accepting people exactly as they are while supporting them in becoming the best versions of themselves. Sometimes the most painful experiences in our lives become the foundation for our greatest growth. Sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply become the catalysts for our most profound transformation. And sometimes the love we thought we lost forever finds its way back to us when we've finally learned how to value it properly. Isabella had returned to New York as Marcus's therapist, but she had stayed as his partner in building the kind of family that was based on unconditional love, mutual respect, and the understanding that true beauty comes from the inside out. Their second marriage wasn't built on the passion of youth or the excitement of new love, but on the deeper foundation of two people who had learned from their mistakes and chosen to grow into better versions of themselves. In the end, the billionaire CEO who had divorced his wife for being fat had learned that she was never the problem. The problem was a man who had valued appearance over character, image over substance, and other people's opinions over his own wife's heart. When he lost her, he lost everything that mattered. When he found her again, he found not just his children and his second chance at love, but his own soul. And the woman who had been told she wasn't good enough had learned that she had always been enough, she had always been beautiful, and she had always been worthy of love. She just needed to find someone who was mature enough to see it. And sometimes that meant waiting for the person who had broken her to grow into someone capable of cherishing what he had once thrown away. Their story ended not with revenge, but with redemption. Not with going back to who they used to be, but with becoming who they were always meant to be. And not with the fantasy that love conquers all, but with the reality that love combined with genuine growth, authentic change, and mutual respect can heal even the deepest wounds and build something beautiful from the ashes of what was lost.